Do you
There
see
you
me?
are. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. A little bit of a technology snafu, but I think we're in good shape now.
Yeah.
All right, so let's kick it off. Hi to everyone on the call. I'm Jessica Richards. I am from JMR Design Consulting, and I'm also fashion director of the Accessories Council. And I'm really excited today to present the second half of Spring 2022, which is our accessories checklist. So if you were able to see the first presentation where we went through our mega trends and our major concepts for the season, that's really where we cover the ethos and the big concepts and ideas and feelings behind the season. This is really just a breakout session to talk about what the must-have items are for spring 2022 in all of our major product categories. So if you weren't able to see the first presentation, let us know, and we're happy to share that with you. I am going to do the scariest part of the presentation, which is get it loaded up on the screen. And hopefully that pops up. Oh, hold on. I think I already did it incorrectly. Hold on, guys. See this? Karen, this is exactly what I was talking about. There we go.
So almost there.
Okay, great. So I wanted to kick off by saying, as we're going through the presentation, if there's anything that really stands out to you and you see a slide that you really love, please take a screenshot or take a picture and post it and tag us. I really love seeing the recaps of the end of what everybody is loving and getting excited about for the season ahead. So there's my Instagram handle as well as the Accessories Council, and we'll look forward to see what everybody is posting today. Guys, I'm telling you that something is going on. Karen, I was also going to say, hopefully in our next season, we won't be doing this digitally. That is my hope for fall 2021, is that this is the last time I'm doing this from my apartment.
Well, hopefully we'll be in the office or someplace fun.
I hope so. I hope this is the last time that I'm sitting here talking within my four walls. So this presentation covers a lot of material, and I will be moving really quickly so that we cover everything. Please put any of your questions or thoughts in the Q&A box, and we'll review everything at the end. So I want to kick off by saying that as we're thinking about spring 2022, this is really a world that we are dreaming about, that is post lockdowns, post restrictions. And this is a time when we are getting excited about being seen again. And normally, as I'm preparing for a season, the questions that I ask myself are, where have we been and where are we going? What are we doing more of and what are we doing less of? But the big question I have now is, where are we going again? And what are the products that we need to get ready to go to those places and be seen again? So when I was planning out the major must-have items for this season, I've had two trains of thought. One is that we want to go out in the world, we want to be seen. In the last presentation, we talked a lot about the Bridgerton effect, or the idea of princess core, which is a big royalty-driven craze that we're seeing on TikTok and Instagram and all of the different social media platforms. So this idea of dressing up and really dressing to the nines and having these really outlandish accessories and sparkle and shine and really getting excited to be dressed up again. As we go through all of the categories, you'll see that crystals, hopefully our Swarovski friends are on the call today, are going to be my big material and trim call out for every single category that we're covering. But as we're thinking about all of the things that we are doing and all of the places that we're going, we also have to think that we've had 2 years really driven by comfort and coziness. And for that long to have the effect on the consumer, we can't imagine that that's just going to go away. So we'll still see comfort driving a lot of the products in the market, but with a more sophisticated and elegant point of view. So I almost imagine, if I'm walking through the footwear floors of the stores in a year, that there's going to be a big divide, 50% princess shoes and 50% dad shoes or tourist shoes. We're not going to talk about Birkenstocks or Tevas. Everything is really moving into a more sophisticated place because we're really looking for that elevation and to get dressed up again. But we still have that need to have a bit of comfort and a bit of sophistication. It's not just all about sparkle. So there'll be a big diversity in some of the products that we see here today. In talking about color, I think one of the most refreshing things that we're seeing is that after a couple of seasons really focused on neutrals, really focused on color palettes that were just about key item colors, now we're moving into real color roles, these really technicolor, rainbow, brights, iridescent materials. I just think that there's such a desire to pop. So the colors that we're going to see are going to be really quirky and bright and really stand out, whether we're mixing them together in a palette in the same item or just presenting them as beautiful color rolls of the same fashion item. Really thinking as well that in the past couple of seasons, we've been so driven by this idea of buying key items, really refreshing our wardrobe with the essentials that we needed or with wardrobe champions for investment dressing. Now we're probably moving into a moment where we want to have a little bit of fun. Such a desire to buy right now. And I think that in a year, we'll be really looking to have a little bit more pizzazz in our wardrobes. So going into some of the colors, when we're thinking about all of the cool colors in the palette, everything feels a little bit quirky. It's not just a cobalt blue or a really safe blue that we know is really commercial. We're thinking about these Turk colors. We're thinking about teals. We're really thinking about something that isn't a color that we already have represented. I say this in every presentation, but a green shoe never sells. I feel like I've seen so many green shoes and they look very appealing right now. So this is something that we know that she doesn't have in her wardrobe. And this is a color that feels really emotional and really quirky and cool and gives her a reason to buy. So just thinking about all of the cool colors and how they have this really different point of view than the more commercially safe blues that we've seen in the past. And the same with the brights. In our last presentation, we talked about pink as a neutral, but here we're seeing that there's these really saturated pinks, whether they're in more of a fuchsia or a bubblegum or a saccharine kind of pink. We're seeing a lot of orange as a major fashion color, and even sort of a more hybrid kind of violet pink kind of color. But every color that we're seeing represented is really, it's really quirky, it's really saturated and has such a strong point of view. We're moving right into the item categories. First up is footwear. And as I said before, this is where we're going to see a great divide between what feels super new and really different than the past couple of years and what's going to feel like an evolution of where we've been. So starting with our big idea in footwear, which is what I'm calling twinkle toes. So in materials, we'll be talking about crystals, we'll be talking about different rhinestone statements on shoes, but even the shoes themselves, going into categories like casual or into sneakers and trainers, we're seeing that people just really have been missing this sparkle and this shine. So the idea of a sequined trainer from Adidas. And I also love that I'm seeing so many of these different drawstrings and shoelaces done in crystals that you can add yourself. I think we're going to see a major sparkle moment happening across all of the different categories of footwear. Moving right into our top items, the slipper is not going away. And I know that this is something that we've been talking about as a major item. NPD really confirmed this as an item that was so strongly performing in 2020. It will continue in 2021. But what does that mean as we're moving into 2022? There will still be that feeling to want to be comfortable, and also this idea of wanting to have a more luxe point of view while you're at home. So that was, again, another idea that we really covered off in the last presentation that you're seeing translated into the items here. Whether it is a indoor-outdoor slipper that you're wearing mostly at home and then to run errands, or if it's a slipper directional shoe, I think we're going to see a lot of this inspiration in silhouettes for spring 2022. And just slightly different than a slipper, but continuing to have that bit of comfort while still being really elegant and refined, we have the soft, fancy sandal. I think that what I should mention here as well is that a consistent theme that we're seeing is items that were brought in as fashion drops in previous seasons, and I'll use the Miu Miu sandal on the far right, that we thought might be just a fashion item and wouldn't be continuing into further seasons, we're seeing that they have a lot more longevity. So even when we're considering our own collections and what that looks like, if there's been a high performing fashion item that still feels relevant because the product development cycles are getting longer, the trend cycles are getting longer, it's worth looking at if they were successful and if they still feel relevant for next year to repeat them. So while this might not be a trend that feels really different than some of the fashion we saw for this season, it could potentially be something that's still relevant and that we still want to bring forward into 2022. What feels really new for next year is the bejeweled sandal. I was thinking about talking about heels last year and what we were saying for 2021, and that the height that I was recommending to be the absolute tallest was 65 millimeters. And that still feels really good. I think that's a nice entry level heel, maybe starting with fall 21, going into spring 22. We could possibly start moving up to 85 again. I think that we'll see that a lot of the newness is really driven in the materials, the colors, and the decoration. So this idea of being bejeweled could be super new on a heel, on a pointed toe bed with a lace up. I mean, that shoe on the far left is checking about 4 or 5 of the boxes that I'll talk about today, but it's still relevant in a hybrid of comfort and fancy point of view, which we think is really important for the new season. And then completely moving into something that feels really new is the flared heel platform. Now this shoe looks terrifying to me because I don't think I've worn anything above an 85 millimeter in a really long time, but at the same time it feels so good because it's exciting. It feels like a really directional silhouette. It feels like something that is very new and very unusual and that we don't have, and that we haven't worn this height for a long time. So for me, this is signaling this big change and what is around the corner to come for newness. The tie-up sandal is something that we discussed in our last presentation, and I wanted to bring it up again here. So this could be really directional with super thin, super long ties that you see going all the way up the foot. It could be just an ankle tie, or like on the far right, it could be something that we see as a thicker tie and just going a little bit north of the ankles. But no matter what you're talking about or thinking about here, this is a merchandising nightmare. So as you're thinking about the tie-up sandal for your collections, just remember how messy this can look on the sales floor. I think I used the same anecdote in our last presentation, but no one is ever really successful with this. I was at Bergdorf's a few weeks ago, and this is just really challenging to execute on a sales floor. So now we're moving into a part of footwear that goes back to what I'm thinking about is the evolution of comfort. This is the idea of the squared footbed sandal. So I think the consumer still has a desire to have this comfort wear shoe. We're moving past Crocs. We're moving past Birkenstocks and Tevas and all of these really sportive sandals that have felt good for the past couple of years, still wanting the comfort, but in a more sophisticated and elevated way. So we're seeing that the footbeds themselves are feeling really squared. They're feeling really oversized. The uppers are a little bit more simplistic, but they're clean and they're elevated. And they feel, again, comfort driven, but still really directional compared to where we've been so sporty and so driven by that sportive look in the past few years. Same with the caged upper. It's perhaps on a lug footbed or it's on a platform footbed, but having the safety and security of a caged upper that has a little bit more coverage also gives it that idea of being more elevated than the sportier sandals of the past couple of years. Maybe one of the biggest questions I've gotten in the past couple of years is where do we go after the Gucci Princeton loafer? It's been so prolific for us in the past few years. It's been sort of the directional loafer for going to the office or wearing with casual looks, but it's sort of run its course at this point and we're needing to move on. So what is the next iteration of a loafer for 2022? I do think that we're going to see a lot of this idea of a soft shoe, whether it's a more covered upper, like we've been talking about, higher top lines in ballet flats or in just soft shoes in general, or if it's more of a Loewe kind of moment, which could have a tied upper or a more traditional plug um, loafer upper. I think we'll see a lot of this as we're moving away from a cleaner hardware driven loafer. On the other hand, the most directional loafers that we're seeing are from JW Anderson, as well as, I'm being really generous here with the word loafer, it's definitely a clog from Hermes. I think if we're thinking about what is going to be the next shoe that we'll just see for seasons to come, it's either one of these shoes and both of these shoes. And for all of my friends that are calling me and asking me what shoe they need for this spring, for this fall to go back to the office, I offer you these two suggestions here. I think that we'll see this shoe, especially the JW Anderson, continuing for many seasons to come. What I like about both of these shoes is the idea that we're moving from that really tapered loafer silhouette into something that's roomier and more squared. Squared in general is something as a silhouette we'll see in a few different product categories. We'll talk about it in sunglasses and opticals a little bit later. But this is just this idea of the evolution of comfort into something that's more sophisticated and more elevated feeling. And then finally, the corollary to our sequin sneaker that started the footwear category, the clean designer trainer. If we are thinking about having a more hybrid model of working from home, working in the office, what is our commuter shoe? What is our sort of sneaker that's built to last? And we're seeing a lot of these really clean, easy trainers coming out of the designer market. So Katie for Adidas, in the center we have Margiela, and then Dior on the far right. For materials and big ideas, high shine, sparkle, stones, there's so much of this happening. I would say glitter chip to a lesser degree, but we are seeing that, but more in the moments of all over stone application, really driving this super sparkly shoe. And if you notice, I think everything here is 85 millimeters or below, especially the Miu Miu shoe on the far left. Rhinestone statements. If you saw my Instagram post, this is one of my top picks. I really miss a sparkly shoe and I can't wait to get back in one again. So whether it's just a trim of stones around the upper, if it's a pattern of stones, or like the sandal on the far right, we are just seeing so much of this sparkly shoe happening. I can't stress this enough, even though I'm discussing this as the newness and the direction for the season, it really represents that novelty at the top. So this is what makes it feel new for spring 22, but we should be thinking about all of our key items and balancing out our collections, not just going completely sparkle. Decorative wrapping and tie-ups, we've talked about this in the past couple of presentations, but I think we'll continue to see that these tie-up shoes, whether they are on heels or on flats, it's sort of a moment of having a bit of jewelry and anklet, as well as this newness in footwear silhouettes. And then for the super scary slide that feels the most directional to me, the idea of an extreme pointed toe bed. We always love to say that Prada is the most directional brand, and when we see something at Prada, we like to watch it for a few seasons to come, knowing that it will eventually infiltrate into all of the other collections. So as we've seen these super pointy toe beds in the Prada shows for the past couple of seasons, we're tying that trend into having Bridgerton in the zeitgeist and all of these, very different standout silhouettes that we've been wanting to have, and that all put together creates a perfect storm for this extreme pointed footbed. Moving into jewelry and hair accessories, I loved this image so much because we've been talking about not just the items that are new, but the new ways to wear it. And our big message for jewelry in our last presentation was stacking. whether it's in a more fashion novelty brand or even in the more classic brands, we're seeing that there's a lot of stacking happening and moving from the ears and the neck, which we talked about so much in 2021, and going to rings and bracelets on the hands. We've had such a disparate moment where the hands have been neglected, or we've been washing our hands so much we haven't been wearing our rings and our bracelets, and we're going to see it move into the opposite for spring 22. Big ideas. We have talked a little bit about how casualization continues to move into spring 22. And what does that mean for ready to wear? Well, I think it means that our sweatshirts that we got so comfortable living in are going to be a little bit more decorated. So loving this idea that we were talking about the shoelaces that were sparkly. I think we'll see some drawstrings that are sparkly or perhaps jeweled or beaded. This is, even if it's just styling, we're seeing a lot of this high costume and fine jewelry moment clashing with casual knits. And I think that that feels really cool and really directional for the season. For our must-have items, rhinestone collars. So we've been so focused really on gold and gold chains, herringbone chains, wearing personal pendants, wearing hoops, talking about all of these really solid metal moments through 2021, going into fall 21, thinking about a little bit more crystal and sparkle and chandelier earrings. Now we're moving into getting as many rhinestones and crystals onto our bodies as possible, starting with the rhinestone collars. So even if we see just an evolution of mixing our gold jewelry with a rhinestone collar, that styling feels really fresh to be extremely 2022. I love this idea of taking all of the rhinestone collars, different colorations, different sizes, different lengths, and styling them all together. And that could also mean just having a single crystal that is really a bold statement. We're seeing that mixed back to chain, whether it's a more casual oversized chain or something a little bit tighter. And I love that all of these, well, the girl on the far right is in lingerie, but the other two a little bit more casual tank top, t-shirt kind of styling. The rhinestone hoop, again, we've really solidified our key item wardrobing over the past couple of years, where we're seeing consumers really focusing on having purchases around investments, things that they didn't have in their jewelry wardrobes that they needed, solid chains, solid hoops. So now that we're having fun again, we can't forget that we need a little bit of sparkle and shine in every silhouette, including the rhinestone hoop. On our hands, we have talked about how important the styling would be, and really the ring's the thing. So we will see a lot of stacks, both across the hand with one ring on each finger or stacked up on a single finger, both in status and more traditional metals and stones, as well as in the cabochon, which I think is really cool and really directional feeling. In our nostalgia moment that we talked about in our last presentation, we talked about mood rings, and I think that that's happening, as well as a more traditional cabochon, and then also the stacking happening in colorful palettes. So the rainbow ring stack to me feels like it's checking a lot of boxes. It's got the color roll, it has the feeling of nostalgia, which we discussed in our last presentation. And it also has this idea that it's bright and it's present, and it has that feeling of wanting to stand out. I think that this particular styling feels really good, really new, and really fresh. And I love that it could move between more costume jewelry brands as well as fine jewelry. Ring pops were something we discussed in our last presentation as well. This idea of mixing either enamel back to fine stones or glass or so many different materials. This idea of a really candy looking ring, whether it's single by itself or stacked or worn across the hand. All of this newness in rings feels extremely different than where we've been, and feels like a great way to move into the new season. Another thing that we love for spring 22 is the nostalgic charm. So to me, this feels like a great way to bridge a feeling of nostalgia, of sort of campiness that we discussed in our concept meeting. And this can go, again, between the fine jewelry market as well as costume. It has a lot of joy. It has a lot of optimism. And after a year that's been 2 years that have been so challenging and so uncertain, this feeling of nostalgia and wanting to have optimism and joy and the youthfulness feels really good. And I think that we'll see this translated through charms. We've been working on the personal pendants. We've been working on nameplate necklaces. We've talked about all of those really personal statements. Now it's kind of updating our stacks and our neck messes with a little bit of nostalgia and fun. Moving into hair accessories, the hair bow continues. Again, it's this Princess Core Bridgerton moment. It feels a little undone. It doesn't have to look perfect. I think that if we're thinking about what feels new about this bow versus fall 21, it feels a little bit more DIY. I love that the girl on the right, you can see that it's clipped in. So it's a really editorial kind of statement. Or on the left, it's just part of this really like new point of view. We talked about how important colored hair and the really extreme cosmetic and beauty trends are going into this season. So it doesn't feel so prim and clean and proper. It could be a little effed up, if you know what I mean. The headband as tiara. Karen was wearing this at the beginning of this presentation. Maybe she was inspired by Bridgerton or by Princess Core trends, but this idea of a super sparkly headband, we're seeing this move forward. I love this idea too, and we've been discussing this on our team, but this idea that all of this super clean beauty is happening and we're seeing it paired back to really extreme jewelry and hair moments. So you can see both of the women here have more cleaned up beauty looks, but these really regal hair adornments that feel sparkly and fresh and fancy. So seeing that these royal moments are continuing into the future seasons. And the crystal scrunchie, another way of adding a little bit of sparkle to the hair. Although I will call this out, I don't know how this is going to work if it's stone, if it's going to just rip out all your hair. I was thinking about this, putting together the slides. So maybe it's just another sparkly material or some sort of glitter material, lurex material. I'm sure everyone will think of something super creative. And what I love about the scrunchie is that it's also doubling as a bracelet. So we're seeing it worn in both places, even if it's just the design of a more traditional scrunchie. Going into our big ideas, pearls. We've been talking about them for so many seasons. We know they are continuing to be super important. They are not going away. They were really reinforced, especially after the inauguration this year. But what feels new and forward about pearls is they're becoming a little bit more personalized. Wilfredo Rosado, who's the designer of the pearls on the far left, also designed the pearls for the vice president for the inauguration, and his collection has a lot of these personalized pearls with letters, with different symbols on them, and they feel really directional, really cool. We're seeing everything from smiley faces and different novelty kind of decorations on pearls to even the materials they're applied to, like a leather strap instead of a more traditional metal application. Silver and gold, it's been a really strong gold couple of years. We're seeing silver come back, but what we're really seeing is that it's all mixed together, whether it's in the stacking or across the different fingers. And we talked about it going back to the manicures in our last presentation, but this idea that we're not just focused on one metal, it's really this statement mixing that continues forward. We've mentioned stones so many times, but what I love most about the newness of this season is that it's not just traditional clear stones. We're seeing a lot of color play. We're seeing a lot of mixing of colors and color palettes of colors in the same item. And that feels really fresh, really bright and optimistic and new. And then finally, just a reinforcement of a trend that we discussed in our last presentation, but spell it out. We're seeing so many designers playing with letters, playing with words, and it has this feeling of nostalgia and youthfulness, which is something that we have identified as a major concept going into 2022. Next up is handbags. For all of my friends that we had a really challenging year in handbags when everyone was staying at home, it's been a year, I think, of going back to the drawing board and thinking about what in this category is moving forward. How are we evolving this category? What feels new? And I can tell you there have been some great ideas that we're seeing moving forward in the handbags category. So let's kick it off with our big idea. This is something that I think may have been fueled by the designer market bringing back so many archival bags and so many archival designs to their collections. We're also seeing that as the resale market and the consignment market is just getting bigger and bigger, that brands are capitalizing on this idea and figuring out how they can be involved in this as well. So the brand Mulberry is taking archival bags back from customers, giving them store credit for the value of the bag, and then sending the bags to their headquarters in England, where they're refurbished and cleaned up and then resold in stores. So to me, this just felt like a really super interesting way to have the customers not just getting money, but getting a credit. So they're staying involved with the brand, they're keeping the dollars in the brand, but tied back to this idea of archival bags, tied back to this idea of consignment, and it felt really fresh. So just something to think about as a big idea that we're seeing in the market. Handbags, I would say, last year I felt so bullish about the wearable small leather good, really minimizing the size of silhouettes so that we're just carrying our essentials, our credit cards, our phones. The littler the bag, but still organized and functional, the better. I think that has checked with the consumer in some way. And overall, we're seeing that silhouettes are consistently either on the smaller side, the medium size, or just something really compact and carryable, with just the oversized totes and the extra large totes happening as a novelty, but still important idea at the top of the pyramid. One of the biggest silhouettes and most important ideas is just the soft shoulder bag. There's so much of this just over the shoulder. The drop is just perfect for keeping it right on your shoulder, sort of pliable, so it can go onto your arm and feel really soft. This to me is the most directional silhouette that stays important probably for many seasons to come. This feels really functional, really carryable, and most likely not something that she already has in her closet. Similar, but still very different to me, is the handheld tote. So again, where we'll see the extra large tote moving forward and we'll see the market tote moving forward. This felt very new to me for totes. Small, compact, but still has that totiness. You can put all your oranges in it. The handle feels really practical. It might not have a shoulder drop, but it's something that you're carrying and it's handheld and super easy. And then the same with the bags that we're seeing here. A lot of handheld bags. This might tie into the trend that hands have been neglected over the past year and a half. We've been wearing gloves. We've been, trying to have as little touch points as possible. So now we're maximizing our hands. We're wearing all of the rings, all of the bracelets, and we're carrying our bag in our hands as well. As I said, we are seeing these extra large shapes continue forward. If there's just a champion market tote in your collection, I think this becomes an evergreen item moving forward. We're seeing, as you can see, 3 of the designer brands here. These are their bags, their champion bags that they're really carrying as a key item going forward. So I think that we'll see that the consumer wants this, especially as we're thinking about behaviors that we're changing, going back to the office, traveling again. There'll be a desire for this bag. We don't have to go into too many iterations of it. Just one perfect market tote is a silhouette that we should be carrying in our collections. Thinking about other silhouettes, the tall structured bucket, again, really clean, sophisticated, elevated, but a new shape and something that feels smaller than some of the buckets we've had in seasons past. And this also to me is great because it is a shoulder strap crossbody potential item where hand carrying has been in the other silhouettes that we're seeing moving forward. The east-west pouch to me is also something that is a iteration of a silhouette we've been seeing for several seasons. The Bottega bag that has been so important, has been knocked off, copied. Where do we go from there? If we've hit saturation point, and we are seeing that designers are starting to rethink what it means to be a pliable east-west pouch silhouette, perhaps adding hardware. I love the Katie style on the left because it does have that hardware, giving it a little bit more of an inherent value proposition, as well as the Simon Miller bag on the right, which feels like it could be a hand-carried pouch, but also has a shoulder strap option. If you were missing that handheld ability, we are also offering the pouch in handheld styles. As we're thinking about going out again, I think there'll be a desire for a going out bag, a novel bag, but one that feels like it is a little bit more practical, whether it is in size and shape, while the one on the far left does not feel like the most practical shape. We are seeing that these are very novel bags. They feel like they're ready to go out again. And both the far left bag and the far right, as we discussed in our last presentation, are made from upcycled materials, recycled materials, depending on the brand that's featured here. And that ties into some of our other design with repurpose themes that we discussed in our last presentation. The box bag, another novel silhouette that moves forward into next year. The one on the right is very small, very novel, but the other two I like because they feel novel, but they also feel like they could carry your things around. And that is something that we're looking for. We're looking for functionality and not just novelty in the seasons to come. For seasonal bags and for seasonal direction, again, that functionality is so important. And if I may talk about a story that's coming in our upcoming Accessories magazine issue, we'll be discussing why the seasonal bag is moving forward with this mix of leather or PU details to traditionally seasonal materials like raffia, straw, canvas. So you can see the examples here that this fabric mixing and material mixing is really important, but in silhouettes that are very functional and go from the beach to the city and have a longer shelf life. The special seasonal bag ties back to all of our fancy, sparkle, decorated ideas that we've been talking about. And if we're talking about newness in seasonality, not just the more practical functional bags, but if we really want that not so functional but very special bag at the top of the pyramid, we'll see that seasonal materials are going to be very decorated. I love this super long tassel, crystals, anything really decorated and really fun and really novel feeling. For details, the pleats or the expendable features on tote bags, I think will be great as we're thinking about really fitting as much of our belongings. We talked about the grab and go bag a year ago as we were having this feeling of uncertainty. So I think that designers are thinking about how to fit as many things as possible into these silhouettes. And we're seeing a lot of pleating details. Structured shapes are really on the rise. Again, this idea of a novel bag that also is very carryable. Crystals, Kira in real life, we're calling it, but this idea of like very sparkly, crystallized materials, whether it's rhinestones or trims or even some sort of glittery all over material. And then this idea of the Minaudiere and it having a resurgence again. I have a couple of theories about this. I think, again, we're looking for that really novel bag, this Bridgerton effect, having something really special. But as we've been thinking about home accessories and slippers, for example, being so important in footwear, and we'll see pillows and eye masks being important in soft accessories. This idea of a bag that could also be an object of art in your home doesn't feel so far off. So I think we will see a lot of this happening in the handbag market. And then finally, moving into our last product group, hats, soft accessories, and eyewear. As I was just talking about, the idea of home accessories being so important and how do we tie them into our world, we're seeing that a lot of designers are taking advantage of this moment and extending their product categories into home adjacent comfortable products. So as Karen mentioned, we have a great fair going on right now with these incredible homeware vendors that really can provide some of these silhouettes if you don't traditionally have them in your collections. But we're seeing that accessories and ready-to-wear designers are extending into pillows or into slippers or into eye masks. And I think it's something to consider. As our last presentation, we talked about luxe lounging, or the idea of having elevated moments at home, especially as we have more work from home, work from office, hybrid models. And if we have wanted to elevate our home a little bit more and our accessories for lounging at home, this is a great opportunity. In hats, we've talked about the bucket hat for a few seasons, and I don't think that it's really going anywhere. What I love about it, it really captures this casual moment, but can also be going back to more dressed up moments. I mean, you can see the girls on the far left and the far right, they're wearing these great dresses, whether it's print collaboration, or if it's something that's like taking a casual hat moment back to more elevated earrings and decorated sweaters. We're seeing that this silhouette continues and will be really important in the seasons to come. And the same with the baseball cap. All of the examples here have this moment of elevation, whether it's a plain poplin cap mixed back to really overstated jewelry, or kind of like a great hair scrunchie moment, or elevated materials. This silhouette is critically important. Business of Fashion ran an article a few weeks ago about how the baseball hat collector's market is increasingly becoming important, as well as like the sneakers market has been. And then in seasonal, again, taking that idea of wanting to be more decorated, more elevated, and bringing it into straw hats as people are, let's say, hopefully traveling again to really great beach destinations and wanting to buy newness in this market. I think that will really drive us to be our most dressed up and accessorized seasonal selves. In soft accessories, we've talked about this again for a couple of seasons, but as the trend cycles are slowing down, this is just showing me that this idea is not going away. But scarf styling, especially silk scarves, we're seeing this move forward, and we're seeing that especially in this hair tied kind of babushka moment is really still moving forward. And it's getting elevated in other ways. I love that center image. I just think that she captures about 10 trends in one. So this idea that the elevated scarf is moving forward and the styling is going to continue to be reinforced in this silhouette. In opticals, the big story is color, colored frames, colored lenses. We're just seeing such a great presentation of this. Women's Wear ran a story earlier this week talking about opticals and how influential color has been. And again, going back to the idea of optimism and joy and what that means expressed in the colorations of these silhouettes. In silhouettes, in opticals, oversized squares, so much of this happening. We talked about goggles being very directional as designers. A year ago, we were thinking about goggles and health, and we saw that a lot of clear frames came down the fall 21 and the spring 21 runways. Now we're seeing probably moving away from that goggle look, but still oversized in statement in a more joyful way. And then just in general, the idea that silhouettes are moving to be more square. We talked about it in footwear, and we're also seeing it in categories like Opticals. And then last but not least, we're ending on a really decorated note. So inspired by these really over the top. We've talked about croquis and seeing them starting in spring 21. We loved it as the idea of keeping your accessories safe and secure, but now we're just decorating our accessories with more accessories. So super decorated, super over the top, fun, decorative, whether it's attached to the lens or is sort of just a one-sided croquis. Really loving this idea for extra embellishment wherever possible. I know I went really fast. Hopefully we have time for questions now, but I'll leave up my contact information. So please feel free to email me or call me. And of course, we're posting to Instagram all of our favorite trends. But that is spring 22.
Hey, Jess, I
Yes.
think we have to go back. So I can come back up and take the screen down. Let's see.
Great. So
We've
how do
got
I?
a lot of questions.
Okay.
If not, I can ask them as the voice from afar.
It's like the wizard.
Behind the curtain.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. No
How-
go?
I'm not sure how to do it.
Well, no worries. I can ask the
Okay.
questions.
Sorry,
Because
everybody.
you're the answer girl. I'm just the asker.
Okay.
Okay. So many. So I'm just going to go back. There were a few questions about millinery. And I know you talked about the bucket hat, but anything that you're seeing on, the higher end millinery?
So I think in general with hats, my feeling has been that we've talked about this in the past few seasons, that because we've been covered up with masks and we've had sort of this covered up moment that we would want in the future seasons, at least the few seasons to come where we have lesser restrictions, not to be covering our faces as much. So where we're seeing the hats come in, like I said, is more this idea of mixing the casualization with the more dressed up moment. I'm not sure that I have any other big millinery moments outside of that. I do think that seasonal will have a great moment because, like I said, people will be traveling again. And I think that maybe that's where we're seeing the elevation in hats as well, is this idea that you'll be thinking about travel and you'll be thinking about beach destinations and also wanting to merge that with elevation. So my prediction would be that that's where we would see the most opportunity.
Okay. How about anything on watches? Do you have any thoughts on what's happening in that category?
I don't, but we can revisit that. I don't have any thoughts on watches at the moment, but that person should email me and we should talk.
Excellent. And, maybe we can do that in the future, talking
Yes.
to the watch. Okay. How about inspiration for travel bags like duffels, weekenders, luggage?
Sure. So I would say that the biggest thought process behind those products should be organization and security. And I think that what we've learned as the design tenets of 2021 is people want to feel comfortable, they want to feel secure, they want to feel really organized. So now we've almost, for let's say a year and a half, not really had the opportunity to leave the house or really travel. So we're almost coming back to that. We have to take baby steps to do it again. We should feel as comfortable as possible doing that. So maybe it's looking at our collections to make sure that they have really great organization, really great functionality, call out something that we're thinking about in a new way. I would also really consider color and how we're using that. I'm like imagining when you're waiting for your luggage to come and everyone has the same black luggages that are coming through the I don't know the name of this, but it's this idea that since color and really standing out and really popping out are going to be so pivotal for 22, maybe that's a way to update or bring newness to your items as well.
Well, that's a great segue to two questions that we have in the chat. One is, what color trend stands out for the season? And then it seems to be a little more solid versus print. But what are you predicting for print and solid?
Sure. So going back to the original color question, and this is, I think, too, where we may discuss things in length in the other presentation. I had said that what I really feel strongest about is pink. It continues to be pink. And for so long, we've said it's millennial pink. And then the next season, it's this pink, it's this pink. I really do think when I'm looking through the whole season and what feels like the standout color, it's a deep saturated pink. I would go for either that more fuchsia color or the more saccharine kind of pink. And then for a family, I think we're seeing so many more of the cools, these really quirky greens, and then teals, a spring appropriate teal. So not as dark as we traditionally go for fall, something a little bit lighter, but these are, kind of like these quirky colors that we don't normally run. They're not as safe, let's say, as the color runs that we've done in the past. We want newness. We want to feel like we're standing out. Going into print, I would say don't do tie-dye. We've probably done that for a few seasons. People have probably done it in their own homes. So we need to move past that. Nothing so far is sticking out to me besides the more traditional status prints, because I think, like I said, we're seeing the silk scarves continue. In the last presentation, we talked about design with repurpose, and a lot of people finding items in the market. I'm using the Hermes scarf as an example, and then they're turning it into new products like a scrunchie. So I think we'll see these more traditional prints, a lot of status prints, maybe some abstracty kind of prints coming back or being as important. In terms of what I think is most important, status print is the most important.
Hold on, you're next on my list. Hey, my dog is crying to go out. I just said she's next. Hey, there's a great question about oversized chain jewelry and, in fact, oversized jewelry in general. What are we seeing?
Sure. I think that what's been great is that for the past few seasons in 21 and in 20, we had like this great status chain moment. So maybe it's a little bit clarifying if I say that if it's not covered here, it doesn't mean that it's gone. I'm saying that we probably have that in our key item collections and in our investment items that we're offering, seasonless items, evergreen items to our consumers. So I think that statement collar has been so great and so important. It continues going forward. But what we can say for newness is if we're bringing in, let's say, a rhinestone lariat or collar into our collections for novelty and newness, it's about styling it with that chain necklace. So we don't just want to bring in the new items. We want to show the consumer how we're styling and editorializing with the items that she's already had in her closet, or we're showing her that that item continues to move on and isn't just a trend from this year.
What about belts?
Okay. I knew this was going to come up. So a couple of things. I think that we saw so much great belt styling for spring 21. I think that we've seen it go into fall 21. Do we see as much? I think we have to really consider what will people be wearing? How important will tailored wovens be going forward? I think we're going to see so much casualization, not just in what we're wearing every day, but also probably in working dress codes as well. So as we're thinking about belts, we should continue again with our key items, and maybe the newness could be in super novel, seeing a lot of, I know this sounds incredibly strange, but belly chains have been really popping up. They were even in the Premier Vision sketches for spring 22. So maybe thinking about it in that way, and really decorated rhinestone belts, rhinestone hardware on belts. We talked about a little bit in the past presentation. So maybe we have this layer up that's really novel, but then also thinking about our key items in different colors, but I wouldn't expand so much on the styles that we're offering. I think it's more about focusing on the newness in color and hardware in our key items, and then having just that great novelty layer up. It might be downtrending a little bit as a product category. Sorry.
You know, I always find with accessories, we have so many categories that it's like a, you know, it kind of like one's up, one's down.
Absolutely,
Next season
yeah.
hot, next season not. Doesn't mean it goes away. It just
No.
means that, you know, there might be another category that's of the moment, but trust me, we've been around long enough. If it's not a belt season this year, it'll come back.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Because then, you know, as people are moving on and they want to be less casual or less decorative, and they want to be more formalized and more tailored, then belts will have a huge moment. And I think we'll have actually a great fall 21 for belts for sure.
So there's a question about handmade and artisan work. You know, what are you seeing in those categories? The question was specific to bags, but you know, we're certainly seeing elements of it in a few categories, but love your thoughts.
Sure. So my thoughts are, if you did not attend the last presentation, I usually assign 3 design tenets to the season. And one of the design tenets that we talked about for spring 22 was conscientiousness. So this idea that the consumer will be really plugged into the brands that they're buying from, what the ethos is. They want to feel attached to the brands and the product that they're buying in a significant way. So I do think that it's really a critical time for that kind of product, especially if your brand has a storytelling opportunity to trace back to where the product is coming from, how it's being made. It can tie in, again, that's also something for upcycled materials or recycled materials. I think that this is a moment where the consumer there's been so much industry backlash in the past year with so many things, that we'll see that the brands that have the ability to tell a story, especially a positive, impactful way that they're influencing their development cycle, that's something that people will be looking for. I think that that's really strong, not just a trend moving forward into the future.
I just popped my email back in. If anybody emails me, I can send the first recording if you missed it. If you want to go back farther and you're an accessory council member, I'm happy to send it. If you're not a council member, there are reasons to join. So that would be one of them. And there's many good reasons to join, but that definitely would be one of them. If you're a member, let me know. Okay, time for more questions. I know we're running out of time, but if you're good for a few more, Jess, I'll send a few more.
Sure.
Okay, how about small leather goods? Do we see anything happening there?
Yes, I think that I've been championing the wearable small leather good for a couple of seasons, and I don't think that goes away. I think that especially, I'll use the word again, but casualization, dressing down, really like moving through the world with either the least amount possible or the most amount possible, again, are 2 extremes. We're going to see that continues to go forward. So I love the idea, if we're looking at small leather goods, that at least a significant percentage of the collection could be wearable or functional in some way. We're seeing it attached to the bags, everything from a water bottle holder to a small pouch where you can just clip it onto the strap. So I think that small leather goods are very, very important.
Great. A couple questions, Jessica, about earrings, statement earrings, or what's happening with earrings?
Statement earrings, I think that we are going to have a very, very, very strong fall 21. And I think that they'll continue to move forward. But like I said, as if we're thinking about where our attention hasn't been and how things are going to be a little bit different, we've had a year and a half or so of being so Zoom ready, a lot of earrings, a lot of necklaces. We'll be wanting to wear rings and bracelets so much next year. That doesn't mean that earrings stop. It just means that we'll see so much more attention in these silhouettes that haven't had them. But statement is the key word here. And I think we should continue to be looking at larger silhouettes. We know that that was so strong for fall, and that's going to continue into spring 22. Just remember Princess, Bridgerton effect, that all moves forward.
Quick question on neons. Do we see that in the mix?
I think true neons, perhaps, but any sort of adjacent, super saturated, super bright colors, yes, for sure.
Face jewelry.
Oh yeah. Did that person go to our last presentation?
I don't know.
Face gems, hair gems, 1000%. I think that that's something that we're seeing happening in social media right now. I had actually had a prediction for, oh, I saw that the person missed it. We do talk about that and how influential beauty trends will be, especially because we missed a season of street style and really seeing what people were wearing to the runway shows. So now beauty is probably more important than ever in terms of how influential it is to our accessories market. And face gems is something that we had talked about, and hair gems. Loved that.
Okay, and I know you covered it a little bit, and I think it's fun because we have it in our current issue, which is almost about to not be our current issue of the AC magazine, because we're almost ready with the new issue. By the end of next week, hopefully we'll be sending an email with the new magazine, and it's really fun. But there is a question about scarves, headscarves, and hair accessories, so I thought that was a good way to end it.
Yes. Okay. I think that we had talked about, and I'll keep reverting back to the past presentations, as I think that, like we said, product development cycles are getting longer and trend cycles are getting longer. So we're not seeing change as much as we were. We saw that there was such a return to investment dressing, investment purchasing through 2020, 2021, and really covering off the key items in your accessories wardrobe that you may not have had but needed. So the scarf being one of them, the silk scarf. And we talked about in the current issue of Accessories Magazine, you can wear it on your neck. We saw a lot of that happening from Emily in Paris. You can wear it in your hair. You can wear it on your head. We have a great feature called How to Rewear It that I'm plugging, that I work with an illustrator to sort of talk about how to rewear the items that you already own or classic items to make them feel fresh. And I think that, as we saw just a few minutes ago, that styling continues to be important for spring 22.
I think we have it. So, okay, we are going to send a recording of this out. I'm happy if you email me to send out your part 1 presentation.
Yeah.
Happy to send that out if you're on today. If you want to go back further, join the council, we will share that. And if you're not on our email list, we'll make sure that everyone who registered is on our email list. So you'll get the magazine because you have trend section in there, and because that'll keep you up to date with our future events.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Amazing presentation. You always make me want to go shopping. I guess that's a good thing.
And then you can call me or text me and say, what should I buy this season? Which has been my favorite question.
All right. Thank you so much. Everyone have a good afternoon.
Bye, guys. Thank you.